Welcome to Salute Your Sports Week 26. Kamen Enchev, Tom Castleman, and Drew Brackett. We've got a big show tonight, starting with recapping last night's college basketball championship game. Baylor winning its first title in school history with the big 86-70 win over Gonzaga.
Yeah, we'll be covering that along with a pretty significant trade in the NFL. Of course, we're going to be touching on baseball as we have breaking news in the All-Star game this year. And then, of course, Kamen's favorite segment, Locks of the Week, and getting into our statements of the week as well. Should be a great show.
Yeah, of course, last night a new champion was crowned in the men's NCAA basketball. Of course, Virginia held that title for a couple of years, the longest champion ever, right? But Baylor cruised to victory, guys. What did you think, Kamen? What was your impression of the game?
Well, I was surprised how overmatched Gonzaga looked early in the game. That was kind of one of those things that hits you. And the 11-1 start that Baylor got off to set the tone for the game. They were up 19 at one point in the first half. Baylor just had better athletes, more athletic guys. Their big guys were strong, got the offensive rebounds. Their guards were really aggressive, harassing Gonzaga, forcing them to 14 turnovers. They were up 19 at one point in the first half, and Gonzaga eventually settled into the game, but by then it was simply too late because Baylor's lead was too big. It was kind of shocking at first to see how much Baylor got up early in that game.
Yeah, and I think it's just as shocking that they stayed up significantly through the game. You know, we talked about Baylor's blowout win over Houston and how Houston actually outscored Baylor in the second half. That didn't happen in this championship game. You know, going into halftime, it seemed like the Bulldogs got on a bit of a roll, trimming a lead that at one point was 19 all the way down to 10. So kind of felt good about the Bulldogs heading into halftime. And then coming out in the second half, I believe the number is that Baylor led by double digits for all but 26 seconds in the second half. So just going wire to wire, I think that was the most surprising thing, that Gonzaga made a run to get it closer. And we kind of expected them to maybe close the gap even more, and we just never saw them kick into that gear. So I thought that was the most surprising thing to watch on my end, is just, you know, thinking it's going to come, and it just never did.
I mean, the hot start for Baylor from three was big. I think they started, 5 of 5 or 6 of 6, something like that. And then the only reason it was close in the first half was because Gonzaga got to the line, and they were making free throws, which was very impressive. But Baylor's rebounding, Baylor had 16 offensive rebounds. Gonzaga had 17 defensive rebounds. So Baylor really controlled the glass. That was a key part of the game. I know that was something we talked about on the show, on the national championship preview show, was rebounding and turnovers. And Baylor just kind of took control of things in the first half and never looked back. But is that what surprised you the most, was how Baylor just kind of cruised?
Well, I think you talked about the offensive rebounds. We talked about how Gonzaga maybe had more size and height, but Baylor had more muscle. They got those offensive rebounds with pure strength, weight room muscle, and to me, Drew, it was most surprising just how easy it looked for Baylor. I think, we talked about this on this show. We've had Baylor and Gonzaga all year long, and the fact that Baylor won the game was not in the least bit surprising because they are a great three-point shooting team. I talked about it all year. If there's one team that could beat Gonzaga, it's Baylor because of their three-point shooting. However, the sheer dominance, the fact that they led wire to wire, the fact that they led by double digits, all but 26 seconds, I believe Tom Castleman said, and the fact that Gonzaga just looked so overmatched for the entire game, that in itself was surprising, and it kind of mirrored the Super Bowl. In the Super Bowl, we talked about how, I had week 1, week 2 of the NFL season. I said we'd have Chiefs Bucks in the Super Bowl. Week 1, week 2 of the college basketball season, I said it'd be Gonzaga Baylor. I was right in both cases, but I picked the wrong champion in both cases, and it came down to, as Tom said in both previews, as he would say, we had the right information, we didn't apply it right. Baylor had simply more balance and more depth, much like the Bucks did compared to the Chiefs. And when Gonzaga's biggest stars didn't quite deliver to the ability that they're able to, much like the Chiefs' biggest stars didn't in the Super Bowl, that's how it looked easy. So that's basically what happened. Baylor's depth and just sheer team play is what won it out for them. So not surprising that they won, but by how much they won and how easily they won, yeah, that was pretty surprising.
Yeah, and looking at some of the different keys to how they won, I know, Drew, you touched on the offensive rebounding differential, just total rebounding differential. Baylor out-rebounded Gonzaga almost 2-1, 38-22. So showing a lot of toughness in the paint there. And then you look at the field goal percentages. Gonzaga was really good from two, averaging 51% from the field, but only 29% from three, whereas Baylor just seemed to be hitting, every shot it seemed. And in actuality, it was closer to every other shot, 43.5% from beyond the arc. So, something that we thought that perhaps Gonzaga was going to have the advantage on rebounding, and that would kind of allow them to get easier 2-point shots, more 3-point shots. That simply wasn't the case. Baylor outshot Gonzaga, and that shows that even though the percentages for the most part were pretty similar, the Bears just got up more shots than the Bulldogs did.
Yeah, so the key in Baylor's win, Common, was definitely the athleticism.
Yeah, I think the athleticism was certainly a big part of it, and the three-point shooting. Again, on our preview, I talked about three-point shooting being a factor. Well, they started 4 for 4, and even though they were 43.5%, they were actually over 50% most of the game. A lot of those missed threes came late in the game, and as Tom said, the difference was the three-point line. You look at Baylor, they won by 16 points. Gonzaga was 5 of 17 from 3. Baylor was 10 out of 23, so that's 5 more threes. 5 times 3, I'm not a math major, is 15. The margin of victory was 16, so the three-point line was key. And the other big key was something Tom talked about. Baylor's suffocating defense, forcing teams to get turnovers, and that's what they did. Gonzaga had 14 turnovers in this game. Baylor only 9. 8 steals for Baylor, and Gonzaga really looked out of sorts with the turnovers. A lot of credit goes to Baylor, but some of the turnovers were really bad, where it wasn't even Baylor doing anything. Gonzaga just threw the ball away. That was very uncharacteristic. I'll say, Drew, though, for sure, one thing that did surprise me was how much more athletic Baylor looked in that game. I would have said that, yeah, maybe they're more athletic, but I don't think the edge would have been as big as I thought. I mean, did we think that Gonzaga was tired from the UCLA game at all, or what kind of happened with that athleticism? I mean, what do you think, Drew and Tom?
Yeah, I think that UCLA game was hard fought, and maybe Gonzaga's legs just a little tired. Baylor just kind of cruised against Houston, so that could have played a factor. And I think Gonzaga, they had the late game Saturday night. So, we're talking a few hours, but, I guess Baylor had a few more hours of rest. So that possibly could have played a factor. But, Baylor just kind of set the tone early and didn't look back.
Yeah, I think it's easy to look at, the fact, the post hoc ergo propter hoc, what happened before causes the thing that came after. It's a little bit of Latin that I'm pulling out on the show here. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. So looking at the minutes from the Baylor Bears in the Houston game, I mean, Baylor's main players played about the same number of minutes, so I don't think it was that appreciable of a difference in terms of them being able to rest. I think it was just Baylor came to play with some more intensity than Gonzaga did and simply executed better, and talking about, I don't know if it's necessarily because they were tired, but a big advantage is, Baylor took 18 more shots than Gonzaga did. So even at the same number or the same percentage shooting at the same clip, that's why we see, 16 points. Common, you pointed out they had more 3-point makes. They just had more makes, all together, which led to such a big victory. So I think it's easy to look at the overtime, look at the emotional win that Gonzaga had. I don't think it had that big of a role to play in it, nor do I think that the whole story of going undefeated had much of a role to play in it. You're playing for the championship, whether you haven't lost a game all season or you've lost a dozen games all season. that's a big game regardless. So I don't think that Gonzaga wilted or came up short. I think Baylor just played way better.
Yeah, I think certainly the undefeated season part of it, I completely agree with you. I think, when you're in the national championship game, the pressure doesn't change whether you have an undefeated season or not. There's enough to play for. I do think it's possible maybe a little bit early in the game it affected them in the terms of playing the UCLA game, but more so I tend to agree with you, Tom. I think that it more than anything is they were sort of shocked at how athletic and strong Baylor was. And I know we talked about how they've beaten some good non-conference teams, but I think that they hadn't seen that type of athleticism game in, game out consistently because they play in a weaker conference. I think that's something that perhaps cost Gonzaga. I think had we seen that game in November, December when they were supposed to play, I think that Gonzaga would have been probably more prepared for Baylor than they were. It was one of those things where it just felt like Gonzaga was just stunned at the beginning of the game. I don't know that it was so much the pressure. I think it was just no one had kind of done that to them all year. And I think if we replay this game, again, I don't know. I have a feeling that if this game was played 100 times, I think Gonzaga might win 55 or 60. I mean, I think they're certainly really close, but unless you're significantly better than the other team, which Gonzaga isn't significantly better than Baylor, you can't get down behind 19 points because then you waste so much energy to come back and then you don't have enough energy left. So I thought it was just more simply being struck by the athleticism, the aggressiveness, and the tempo that Baylor played with, something Gonzaga just hadn't seen all year. They hadn't seen that type of suffocating defense, and that's why they scored what was crazy, a season-low 70 points. That's how good that offense was, and they just couldn't get going in this game.
Yeah, so putting a bow on this – oh, go ahead, Tom.
Well, no, I was just going to say it's not in a rundown or anything, but just really quickly, do you guys think that we'll ever see an undefeated wire-to-wire season ever again, or is that a thing of the past happening since 1976?
I don't know. That's a hard question because I'm thinking of in our lifetime. I think it's going to happen at some point. Whether it's going to be in our lifetime or not, I don't know. I mean, I think that's a very hard task to achieve. I think it's very hard to be so consistent. I do think if I had to pick that we might see it, and it would probably be from a team like Gonzaga who plays a weaker conference schedule, and if they deliver in the clutch more than they did this season, that would probably be the team to do it. But, I mean, it's very hard to go undefeated in any sport. There's a reason why we haven't seen an undefeated wire-to-wire college champion since 1976. Again, Indiana. I'm not good at math. I think that's 45 years, though, off the top of my head. Castleman's probably better. He can probably confirm. But it's been a while. And same deal in the NFL. We saw it with the Patriots, too. That year, I think, was it 07, they were undefeated, and they lose in the Super Bowl. It's like you got to, sort of time out your losses because at some point they're going to come. Gonzaga just had the worst timing for their loss. Drew, do you think we'll see it possibly? Or
yeah, I mean, I think next year in the college basketball is going to be very interesting, right? Because this year was basically it doesn't count towards eligibility. So you got guys declaring, and then anybody can transfer anywhere they want and not sit out. So we're seeing a historic amount of transfers. It's kind of like an NBA free agency kind of deal out there. So there's a chance we could have one really, really good team, and it could happen next year. You never know. But, yeah, I think it will happen in the next 30 years.
Interesting to note that that's actually one of the reasons that Roy Williams supposedly decided to retire. He just didn't like how guys were moving in the transfer portal and how all that worked. Also interesting, our school, our alma mater, Mizzou, I know I covered them for 2 years as a TV sports reporter there. They've got 5 guys in the portal and literally 3 key players. I think they had one guy graduate and they had 2 or 3 of their key players enter the portal. So it is interesting, and it's interesting to see what happens with these teams. I think Jalen Suggs is, going NBA draft since he's lottery. But you look at Corey Kispert, actually, I mean, you don't want to play the blame game, but he's a first-team All-American, and he didn't play as good for Gonzaga as he could have in the NCAA tournament. Drew Timme was on a roll, but didn't look quite as good in the national title game. He's only a sophomore, so it'll be interesting to see how many of these Gonzaga guys themselves actually do come back next year.
For sure. It'll be exciting to see. And do you guys have anything else to add on the title game? Or I think that might wrap up.
Oh,
we don't have one shining moment. But.
No, Drew had one more question for us, I think, if you looked at the rundown.
Yeah, oh yeah. And, putting a bow on this title game, will we remember this Gonzaga team 20 years from now? Their undefeated season, 31-1, but a loss in the title game, Common.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to remember this team at all 30 years from now, because if you lose and you don't win the title game, it means almost nothing. I mean, I'm going to ask you guys a very simple and recent trivia question. Now, you guys might get it because you're bigger sports fans and know a little bit more than the average person, but if you don't get it, this will prove my point even more. When is the last time we had an undefeated team entering an undefeated season, entering the Final Four? And then losing. When was the last time it happened?
I mean, wasn't it Kentucky? 38-1?
It was Kentucky. So, I mean, like I said,
there you go.
You knew that. But, I mean, a lot of people don't remember that Kentucky basketball team. How many players can you name off that Kentucky team?
Well, there's been so many good Kentucky teams.
That specific team, Tom, what do you have?
I know Karl Anthony Towns.
The Harrison Twins?
Yeah.
Oh,
was that De'Aaron Fox, or was he a little bit later?
No, Fox was not on that team. He was the
there was a guard, role player who could shoot, small guy.
Different year. You're thinking of
that was a different year?
No.
Well, let's see. Karl Anthony Towns, the Harrison Twins. Let's see. Who was... Boy... I mean, these guys are probably all in the NBA.
The best player on that team actually was a bench player on the Kentucky team as a freshman. Currently the best NBA player on off that team. All due respect to Karl Anthony Towns, you can obviously argue for him, but probably the best NBA player off that team didn't start as a freshman for Kentucky.
Really?
Came off the bench. He's a guard.
Kyle Wiltshire.
No. Devin Booker.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and Willie Cauley-Stein was also on that team. Again, you were able to get it, Drew, because you followed and worked in sports media the last few years. But
yeah.
I feel like the casual fan wouldn't really, like, we don't really think, and even this, like, maybe you remember it, but when you hear, like, an ESPN graphic thrown up, you know, the best college basketball teams of all time, you're never going to see the 2014-15 Kentucky team that went 38-0 with the Final Four loss to Wisconsin. They had Karl Anthony Towns, Willie Cauley-Stein, the Harrison brothers, Devin Booker off the bench. If it were a 7-game series, that team would have definitely won the national title, but it wasn't. Another team that a lot of people don't talk about as one of the greatest teams of all time, the 1990-91 UNLV basketball team. They were undefeated until the Final Four, losing to Duke there. They were beating teams by nearly 30 points per game. And a lot of these guys weren't necessarily stars in the NBA, but they had so many NBA players on that team. Larry Johnson, probably the best, a good player with the Knicks for a while. Stacey Augmon, Greg Anthony, longtime NBA players, 4 first-round draft picks, another in the second round. That was a stacked team. And we don't hear them talked about as one of the great teams of all time because they lost in the Final Four. So I don't think we're going to really be talking about Gonzaga 20 years from now. No one really talks about the second-place team. So this Gonzaga basketball team is going to be forgotten unless possibly, you know, someone comes back and they win the title next year. They can talk about how, look, these guys won the national title game 2 years in a row type thing. But for the most part, this will not be a team that goes down in history. Absolutely.
I mean, maybe not the specific team, but Gonzaga is a program that's not going to be forgotten. I mean,
no,
this is a powerhouse that has been a powerhouse the last 15 years.
Well, I'm talking about this specific Gonzaga season, this specific team. Are we going to remember, you know, when we're talking about the best college teams we've seen. I don't think. I mean, I might point to that because I don't think one game defines a season. But the casual fan and the casual media member isn't going to put a team that didn't win the championship on their list of all-time great teams because they didn't win the championship.
Sure, that's fair. That's fair.
Much like the Illinois team in '05, that was a fantastic Illinois basketball team. They had one loss going into the championship, but no one talks about that team because they lost in the championship.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think we can bow it up, Drew, and you can move on.
We'll move on to the NFL. Big trade the other day. Yesterday. I guess it was yesterday, yeah. Sam Darnold leaving New York. He will be going to Carolina, and I think it was 3 draft picks, if I remember correctly. So what do you guys think? Is that a good trade? Who wins that trade?
Yeah, that's a 6th-rounder in 2021, a 2nd and 4th-round pick in 2022. Drew, is that your team in North Carolina? Is that the local team, the Panthers? Who do people support there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Charlotte's hour and a half, hour 10 down the road. So I think most people in South Carolina and North Carolina support the Panthers, and we get that they're on CBS or Fox, whatever, locally. So
Fox.
Oh yeah, it was a big deal. Carolina made a lot of news the other day or yesterday. Hubert Davis, the North Carolina new head coach at UNC. Of course you will. And then the big trade in the NFL.
Yeah, as far as this trade, I think this is very interesting. I'll kind of give you a breakdown. I'll let you guys talk, then I'll kind of tell you if I thought who won the trade. But I think you look at Sam Darnold, his career so far has been a failure. Only 45 touchdown passes, 39 interceptions in his career, 78.6 passer rating. He's never played a full 16 games. He's 13 and 25 as a starter. Just barely had one season with over 3,000 pass yards. This last season, he was last among qualifying QBs, number 35, with a 72.7 QB rating, just barely ahead of Carson, or behind Carson Wentz, rather. So his career thus far has been an absolute failure. But let's not forget, if you look at Mel Kiper and Todd McShay, I was looking at a list they had during the national championship. I think it was Todd McShay's list. And it was the top-rated prospects since Peyton Manning of the last 20 years. And he had Andrew Luck was his number 1. Number 2 was Trevor Lawrence. And number 3 was Sam Darnold. So we're, as a pure prospect, pure talent, arm talent, and abilities, this guy was considered literally the 3rd greatest quarterback coming out of college in the last 20 years. So there's a lot of potential there.
Absolutely, and he's only 23 years old. He's got plenty of time to still kind of figure it out. I mean, we're in an era of the NFL where, from an analytical standpoint, we understand now how much turnovers hurt. If you look at earlier eras of the NFL, plenty of quarterbacks had double-digit interceptions in a given season. But with the way that, rookie contracts are now constructed, the window for a team to optimize winning is when their star quarterback is on his rookie deal, but when it's cost controlled before he's making all the big money. So I think that we kind of gotten away from the fact that there are any number of quarterbacks who kind of struggled earlier in their career. I mean, you look at somebody as talented as, say, John Elway, didn't win titles until his last couple seasons in the league. You look at Drew Brees, struggled for the first couple of years in San Diego before getting a little bit better and then moving on to New Orleans and becoming an all-time great.
None of those guys struggled as much as Sam Darnold struggled, though. I see what you're saying, but your comparison, I don't know. Those guys were not struggling at the same level that Sam Darnold is struggling.
Well, no, not at the same level, but I'm saying is that this guy has plenty of ceiling, plenty of career in front of him. I know that right now he's looking closer to, competing with Teddy Bridgewater for the job. It's just going to be a matter of, it's kind of sort of fits, can the Carolina staff get more out of him than New York did? New York did no favors for Sam Darnold throughout his time with them, and part of that comes down to how they acquired him. They had to trade up a boatload of draft picks. I believe it was a first round and like 3 second rounds or something like that to move up to grab him in the draft, and that really makes it difficult for a team to try to fill out a roster around him. I think that they made the right move in moving on from Sam Darnold, getting draft picks, and now that they're picking at the number 2 spot of just their own volition, they don't have to trade up for it. They'll be able to draft better, get more talent around whoever they're going to support next. So, I mean, it's easy to look at the numbers that Sam Darnold's put up and say that he's struggled mightily, and it's true. But then also look at the teammates that he's had. Look at the the wide receivers that he's had to throw to. I could name maybe 1 or 2 that are of note, but for the most part, he hasn't really had great weapons around him. So we'll see what Matt Rule does. I think, is Joe Brady still their offensive coordinator? He coordinated Joe Burrow for the LSU Tigers in their great season where they won the title. So if they can make an offense that's more suited to Sam Darnold's strengths, I think he can still be very successful and put a pretty toxic relationship behind him.
Yeah, I think this could be a great move for the Panthers, getting Sam Darnold, because let's face it, the Jets, as you mentioned, Tom, didn't do him any favors when he was in New York, and I just think that you got to give him a chance with the Panthers because he obviously has some talent there. Coming out of college, in college, he was very highly touted, as you mentioned, Common. So the guy's got to have something left, right? So how will he do under Matt Rule and, as you mentioned, Joe Brady? I think he'll be better. Absolutely.
I think this is a rare case where it's sort of a win-win for both teams. I mean, I think he'll be better because he simply can't be any worse than he has been so far. But I think getting into more of contract Castleman territory here, I believe, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but based off what I looked up, this is his 4th year coming up on his rookie deal, and he's got a 5th-year option that they have to choose whether to pick up by May 3rd. So this is basically a rental for 1 or 2 years for the Panthers, and then if it doesn't work out in those 1 or 2 year span, they can let him go. So they're not signing him to a long-term investment, and they didn't give up a first-round pick in this trade either. So it's one of those almost sort of like low-risk, high-reward type situations. I think also in New York it wasn't working just because Tom mentioned they gave up a lot to get him, and if you give up a lot to get him and you don't perform, it kind of shifts the perception even more, much like Mitchell Trubisky in Chicago didn't work out. Well, a lot of people were upset about what they gave up to get him, trading up, and what they could have gotten, obviously, in Mahomes and Watson. So sometimes that also hurts you as well. I do think he's going to do a little bit better. I am still worried, though, because Carolina, like New York, does not have very good wide receivers. Now, they do have Christian McCaffrey if he stays healthy. He's a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield, also a good running back. So his offense is improved, but still not very good. So I am a little worried about him performing well because his offensive team is also not very good in Carolina either.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what happens come fall, I guess, when the NFL begins. But moving over to something that's happening now, the Masters this week, guys, at Augusta National. Always an exciting time, such a storied tournament. What do you think? I mean, Tom, I know you're not a huge golf guy, but what do you have winning this thing?
So I don't know if momentum is a storyline that often goes into golf, if having recent success is going to portend future success. Portend, yes. But if there is, I'm going to go with Jordan Spieth picking up his first tour victory at the Texas Open. It was his first victory in 4 years. So I think coming into Augusta, I mean, he's one of those golfers that was really young, had early success, was kind of given a mantle of following Tiger Woods, kind of similar to Rory McIlroy. And it's possible that the pressure got to him a little bit. I'm thinking that maybe he comes into this tournament having won one just a little bit looser, a little bit freer, and, able to get into that zen mode that you need to golf really, really well. So I'm going to go with Spieth to tackle the course at Augusta.
I'm going with the other guy you mentioned, Rory McIlroy. I think McIlroy, Drew knows I like to pick Rory McIlroy.
Have you ever not picked Rory McIlroy?
Oh, absolutely. I've picked Dustin Johnson before, and he's won. So DJ is one of the guys to go with. Jordan Spieth used to be a guy I went with until he started doing badly the last few years. So if you asked me that question 2 years ago, you might have asked, do you ever not pick Jordan Spieth? But anyways, Rory to me is plus 1,900 odds on DraftKings. That's a good value bet right there. I know we'll have locks of the week coming up. But he has the sixth best odds to win, despite being ranked fourth best player in golf. And actually, if you look at his ranking, he's played pretty good. He's ranked fourth despite the fact that he hasn't won a major since 2014, or was it 2015? I think 2014 is what I have written down. So this guy is still one of the top golfers in the world. He hasn't been able to deliver in the clutch recently, but I think he's due. The Masters is the only major he hasn't won, so I think King Rory takes home the Masters this weekend.
Wow, interesting. Well, Tom, as far as the recency thing, yeah, I think everybody buys that because Jordan Spieth went from 60-1 odds to 10-1 odds to win the Masters, so everybody's on board with you there. Tom and Rory, yeah, he's got a chance, but I like Bryson DeChambeau. I don't know if you saw the video of him out on the range. Vijay Singh was watching him. That guy is just insane. So I'm going to take Bryson in this one. It's tough to not take Dustin Johnson. Of course, shot 20 under on the tournament in the 2020 Masters. Tiger won the 2019 Masters, but Dustin Johnson was 20 under. So it's tough to not take him. But, you know, Bryson DeChambeau is going to just carve up this course. So I'm going to take him to win the Masters this week.
Yeah, so golf might be like the only sport I can think of that Drew probably follows more closely than me. I think that's like his thing. So maybe I don't know if this reference is valid, but can Bryson DeChambeau putt the ball? Because I look at him, he's like Happy Gilmore. He hits the ball a million miles, but when he has to make the clutch putt, is he going to be able to do it? I'm not so sure. He's Happy Gilmore. I love that movie.
Yes, he can putt. Bryson DeChambeau can putt. I think he's gonna. I think he's got a good shot to win. I mean, he's a favorite, one of the favorites, and yeah, I mean, he's good with the putter. He's not your typical kind of golfer, I guess. Not your stereotypical golfer where you hit it like 300. No, he hits it like 350 yards, 375 or more. So yeah, he's massive.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, so let me ask you this question. So I remember we had a lock of the week where you picked Lexi Thompson to win some women's tournament, LPGA championship or something.
That was like the women's U.S. Open.
Women's U.S. Open, and she had Bryson.
It was to make the cut, actually. It wasn't to win.
Okay, to make the cut. So even worse, you didn't make the cut, and she used Bryson DeChambeau's caddy. Now, is Bryson DeChambeau using the same caddy that didn't work out for you, or has he changed his caddy since, or do we not know?
I don't think he's changed his caddy. I think he's using the same one, so he'll be just fine.
So that caddy has not done you wonders in the past. So I would look out for that pick, because that caddy hasn't been very helpful to you.
I guess we'll see. In other news, we'll move to baseball. Major League Baseball moved the All-Star game from Atlanta to Colorado because of Georgia's voting law that potentially prohibits some voting issues. What do we think about it, Common?
Yeah, I think they did it because I think they potentially some portions of the populations, like African Americans, would have a harder time voting. I think it's interesting to see the MLB do this because I don't know. I mean, and this is very complicated stuff, but the NBA has been kind of the league in the forefront of tackling social justice issues and kind of the Black Lives Matter movement and all that. The MLB hasn't done it as much in the past, and I think part of that is because obviously the NBA has more African-American athletes than the MLB does. But I think it's one of those things where it's a polarizing thing. A lot of people get upset it happens, but I understand the league doing it for the optics of it, and I also understand that, I mean, that is a real thing. Like, I haven't maybe researched it as much as I should, but I did look into it, and it does seem like that law is going to prohibit certain things, and they specifically moved it to Denver, which I read about, supposedly has one of the most progressive voting systems. They call it the gold standard of voting, in fact, in Denver in terms of inclusivity and the such. So I think to those people that are upset about it, well, it's, you know, that's the world we live in, and you'll still get to watch the All-Star game at home. I don't know that it's that big of a deal personally, and I'm okay with the league deciding to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing something that just about every business or corporation does. I mean, we've seen over the course of this pandemic year more protests, more anti-racist protests across this country. And so what is baseball doing? They're recognizing the potential changing in demographics. You know, we saw the NBA do this a couple of years ago with some moving the All-Star game out of Charlotte. Yeah. Due to some legislation that state had passed. It's basically baseball saying we have to protect our money, and the best way to do that is to take the game and go someplace else. So, you know, that seems to be why they're doing it, and you know, they're making the decision that's right for them from a money perspective. Looking forward at perhaps expanding their demographics later, that's going to be key. People are going to try to remember or try to ask, you know, hey, what have you done? What was your stand? You know, this is what companies, this is what organizations have to be cognizant of now going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just a final note on it. You know, the Colin Kaepernick situation a few years ago. You know, the NFL was very against it, and it turned out that maybe they should have been a little more forward thinking, much like the concussions stuff we had in the NFL. Mm-hmm. Not even a race issue. The NFL kind of denied the concussions for a long time, and it's something that they're doing very well with now. And I think ultimately player safety matters, so I think they're doing that right. So I think a lot of it is in the social media world and the way we live. The optics matter, and I think, like as Tom mentioned, you're always going to anger someone. You're not going to have a win-win scenario with any of this stuff because it's all very polarizing. But the MLB, I think, is doing what they probably feel is right in this situation. On a lighter note, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, Denver's hosting it for the first time since 1998. I do kind of remember, I don't remember the game itself, but I remember there was a lot of buzz, you know, in the town about the All-Star game. And, well, yeah, of course. I mean, it's a hitter's park, so the home run derby should be really exciting, but I just remember in '98 I was like 7, so I kind of remember it. But I just remember there was obviously a lot going on during that weekend.
Yeah, Drew's the resident Denver guy, so that's exciting stuff. Yeah, I mean it's good. It's good for Denver. I wasn't going to attend it either way, so you know I'm going to get to watch the All-Star game. So I think I'll survive with this move. I'll be watching on my couch, no matter where they do it. Something else I'll be watching is our progress on Locks of the Week. Favorite segment, we go back to last week. Not a good week for Drew Brackett. I think he had an 0 for 3. He picked the A's over the Astros. Astros went 8-1. He had the Predators over the Stars in hockey. It was 4-1 Stars winning. And then he had Leeds United, Sheffield United under 2.5 goals. There were 3 goals in that game, so he just missed it. And I warned him, Leeds United games tend to go high scoring, but he didn't go for that one. So a rare pick where he misses the under. Tom Castleman 1 and 2. Also missed that A's Astros game. That was not a good game for you guys. Ironically, I was thinking about betting that game, and I probably would have gone the other way, but I didn't. But anyways, Tom Castleman had the homer pick with the White Sox over the Angels on opening day. The bullpen blows it. They lose 4-3 late in that game. But Lucas Giolito over 6.5 strikeouts. He did have 8 strikeouts for Tom. I was 2-1. I got the Heat -3.5 over the Warriors. They won by 7. I had Baylor -5 over Houston. They won by 1 billion. And then I clearly overestimated Gonzaga all weekend long since I had them covering 14.5 against UCLA. They only won by 3. So currently I have the lead on the season. Drew Brackett is fading. And Tom Castleman only 1 game back behind Drew in the win column.
All right, well, we'll look to keep things going this week. You guys know me. I like to do themed picks of the week because I don't put any money on anything. I do this for fun, and it shows because I am not very good at it. But I'm going to go with a theme this week. Since it's the Masters, we're going with a straight-up Masters card on my end. So he let me down a little bit last time, but I'll take my guy Hideki Matsuyama to outshoot Tyrell Hatton. So you can get that -115. Since I'm going to pick him to win the tournament, I obviously think Jordan Spieth will outshoot Rory McIlroy. So we'll have a little bit of a fun rivalry going between Common and myself.
Let's go.
I'm going to do something that you guys gave your picks. I feel very good about going with this lock of the week. You can get it at plus money, at +110. You can take on Bovada Dustin Johnson, Jordan Spieth, Bryson DeChambeau, Justin Thomas, Jon Rahm, and Rory McIlroy to win against the field. If you want to take the field, that's -140, but I'll take the plus and the favorites to come out on top.
Well, that's a good bet. Do you have any one of those 6 guys or 5 guys? How many did you list?
Johnson, Spieth, DeChambeau, Thomas, Rahm, McIlroy. So you get 6 players against the field.
That's not bad.
Wow.
Drew, do you have a lot of Masters themes? I imagine you probably do.
Just one. I've got the same Jordan versus Rory matchup, and take Spieth to win that matchup at -125, and then I've fallen behind a little bit, so back to the soccer. Well, the Championship League of England Saturday morning, Birmingham City versus Stoke City, under 2 goals. That game was maybe 1-0. I mean, that game, nobody's scoring there. And then La Liga Saturday afternoon, the common special, Real Madrid against Barcelona. Take Barcelona. No, don't take Barcelona. Take the under in that game. Under 3 goals. Real will probably win 1-0. Or it will be a 1-1 tie.
Wow. Drew Brackett's trying to instigate things. So I'm going to go straight to the same game, Barcelona.
Wow.
Real Madrid. Barcelona +115 money line. So you can get some good odds on that game. Barcelona to win straight up. The La Liga race is heating up. Atletico Madrid is playing dreadful. They're up 1 point on Barcelona, who's 1 behind. Real Madrid is 3 behind Atletico, 2 behind Barca. So this game could decide the whole league title. Guess what, Drew? Barcelona's first 14 La Liga games, they had 6 wins, 4 draws, and 4 losses. Since then, 14 wins and 1 draw and no losses in their last 15 league games. They've only lost 2 games in 2021, 1 in the Spanish Cup, 1 in the Champions League. They've looked phenomenal since the turn of the calendar year. Messi is back to playing at his best. They did have an off game Monday, but they still found a way to win. I'd be shocked to see so few goals. I can see it maybe pushing where it's like 2-1 Barca or something, but I think we will get to the 3 goals, and I think Barcelona's going to win. I think Sergio Ramos is out for Real Madrid, their star defender, their captain. I think that's going to hurt them a lot in that game. I think it's going to make life easier for Messi. It's going to make life easier for Barcelona. This, by the way, is the most watched sporting event in the world on average besides the World Cup and the Olympics. And they watch this game in Japan. They watch this game in China, the Clásico, the greatest rivalry in sports history, Barcelona and Real Madrid. So I would advise you to tune in if you can, Saturday at 2 o'clock. My whole family is going to be watching it. We're going to deck out in our Barcelona gear. My girlfriend's going to be decked out. My dog will be wearing his Messi jersey. It's going to be a whole party of soccer on Saturday. I can't remember being this excited for a sporting event since perhaps the Super Bowl. And that didn't go well, so hopefully this one goes better.
Well, first of all, I think you were excited for last night's game. Second of all, Barcelona is due for a loss then after all the stats you just spouted out. They're due to lose.
Okay. Well, Real Madrid did beat Liverpool 3-1 in the Champions League today, so Real Madrid also playing well going into this game. This is going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle.
Sergio Ramos play?
No, he didn't play. He got hurt last week. He's out for a couple weeks. He will not be playing on Saturday. Zinedine Zidane.
That is a big loss.
Yeah, he's a star. Zidane is a master tactician, though. I don't think Barca will blow him out, but I can see them winning by a goal. Messi scoring the game-winning goal, maybe the 90th minute, like he did in 2017. It's going to be awesome. So tune into that soccer.
Is Modric on Real?
Modric, yes, he is still on Real Madrid.
He's
35 years old and still playing well. Karim Benzema.
He's 35.
35. They were going to get rid of him.
I thought he was like 25.
No. He's an old geezer, but he's
still
really good. He's probably my favorite player on Real Madrid. Tom Castleman would love him, actually. He should become an adopted Modric fan. He's this tiny little guy that runs around like crazy over the whole pitch, just does not take a breath, and he's good. He's really good.
I'll take it under advisement.
He looks like he's 25. I knew who that was. He looks really young.
Is he 35?
I don't know. Maybe I haven't watched him in 5 years. He is 35. You're right. Maybe I haven't watched him in 5 or 10 years, apparently, but I thought he was always really young.
I mean, he just played in the World Cup in 2018. Were you not watching the World Cup? He helped lead Croatia to second place in the World Cup.
I don't know.
Here's a fun fact about Modric. In the last 12 years, he's the only guy not named Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo to win the Ballon d'Or, which he won in 2018. Didn't deserve it, but he won it. So, but yeah, it's going to be a great game. Being sports, Ray Hudson will be on the call, the greatest sports broadcaster of all time. So I just cannot wait till Saturday. But betting back to my locks of the week, besides Barcelona, there's Messi, by the way, right there. He's going to shine. NBA picks tonight. These games haven't started yet. 9 o'clock tips, I believe, so I'm in the clear. I like Blazers, Tom Castleman's adopted team, plus 5.5 at the Clippers. Blazers playing good basketball of late. They've won 5 out of the last 6 games. They look better since C.J. McCollum came back from injury. Taking 5.5 points gives me confidence they cover. They may lose the game, but they should cover the points. And then Bucks minus 6.5 at the Warriors. Bucks have won 3 straight on their West Coast trip, so clearly they're enjoying the trip. Warriors, meanwhile, going in the opposite direction. They've lost 3 straight, including a 53-point loss to the Toronto Raptors. Are you kidding me? Golden State has gotten blown out more than any other team in the NBA this season, perhaps in NBA history. These guys either win a close game or they get blown out, and that's because if Stephen Curry isn't on fire, they're not going to win anything. So look for another blowout. Bucks easily covering that 6.5-point spread.
All right. Well, I guess let's see. Statements of the week and salutes of the week. Common, I know you have a salute.
Yeah, I will have a salute/statement, but I'll let Tom Castleman start this one off before I give my picks.
All right, so before I get to salute or statement, just a quick statistical note. If anybody wants to fact-check Common snorting at my assertion that Elway and Breeze struggled early in their careers, similar to Sam Darnold, you can look up their Football Reference pages just fine and see that I'm not completely off the mark with that. My salute of the week, it's a little bit delayed on the news, but a salute to Porter Moser, now formerly the Loyola Ramblers head basketball coach, getting the gig in Oklahoma, coaching the Sooners going forward. It might be a little bit sacrilegious to say this, but I guess I'm going to have to adopt the Oklahoma Sooners now as one of my teams. I am that big of a Porter Moser fan, so I'm excited to see what he can do in a power conference with a major storied program and see if he can take them to some new heights in the NCAA. As far as my statement of the week goes, we're about a week into baseball season, not quite a full week yet. But pace of play has been a major issue in the game. Usually in sports, when you have analytics teaming up with team performance, you have a better product. If you look at the NBA, more points. You look at the NFL, more points. You look at baseball, you look at longer games. Why is this? Because the so-called 3 true outcomes of either getting a walk, a home run, or a strikeout are actually the most prevalent way of trying to win a game. Ironically enough, baseball does not get better when the team tries to get better at winning. Baseball's more fun when there's more action in the game, but getting individual hits, getting singles, sometimes some doubles, isn't as efficient of a way of putting up runs and winning games. So, what has baseball been doing about this? Tom Verducci wrote an article for Sports Illustrated, and in his report said that there is an average of 25 seconds between pitches and an average of 4 minutes between balls in play. By comparison, our human attention span shifts every 19 seconds. Baseball's moving too slowly, so what are they doing? They're using the minor leagues as a kind of training ground or a little bit of a testing ground, better said, for trying out some new rules to try to improve the pace of play in the game. So we're looking at things like limiting the shift. All infielders must keep both feet on the infield dirt. A 15-second pitch clock so that pitchers can't max out every time they throw the ball. They have to have a little bit more fatigue in there. Robot umps. There's something that we have right now. We call it pitch framing. It's really umpire fooling. It's making a human being think that they see something that they don't. Robot umps and having an automated strike zone would help with that. And these rules, among many others, are targeting at increasing the pace of play and excitement in a baseball game, which is something I am all behind. I like my teams winning, but I like seeing action in a game as well.
Yeah, a couple of things. First off, I'd love to see them bring the bunt back when they do the shift and the third base line, there's no third baseman there. Just bunt the ball down the third base line. Even a big, slow guy can get to first base if there's no one there. So the bunt is a lost art in baseball. I would like to say the 15-second pitch clock, I'm 100% behind it. That's the number one way to increase play. In fact, if they're taking 25 seconds, 15 seconds, I mean, you're literally going to put a major dent in it just alone in the 15-second pitch clock. And I think that's actually one of the things that's contributed to me because you guys know I'm a diehard sports fan. I love every sport. But it used to be, to me, baseball, basketball, football, and soccer were like kind of my 4 main sports. And right now, baseball is a little bit behind those. Not to say that I don't love baseball, but I think the attention span is part of the problem for me, that it's kind of gone down a little bit to me over the years. And I think this could definitely help put it up there, in my rankings at least. I will say this, I don't like the shifts, though. I think that strategy, I think we should allow them to shift as they wish, and the players should adjust. I also don't like the automated strike zone. As someone who's umpired Little League Baseball, I think umpires and refs are part of the game, and that's part of what makes baseball so exciting. How is that umpire zone that day? Maybe I'm nerdy and I like watching that more than anyone else because I'm umpired, but I like seeing, is he calling a tight zone? Is he calling a loose zone? Is he consistent? Is he, what is it? That's part of what makes baseball great. So I don't like a lot of the changes they're doing in terms of shifting and automated strike zones, but I think the 15-second pitch clock is absolutely 100% something the game needs. And they have that in tennis, by the way. If you watch tennis, they have a serve clock for the tennis players, so that is something we've seen in sports.
And Drew, how do you feel about some of these proposed rules changes that we've seen?
Yeah, I mean, baseball, obviously the goal is to get quicker. As a guy who doesn't watch much baseball, yeah, that would probably benefit folks with the pitch clock and, the shifts. I mean, I'm a believer that you can do any type of defense that you want. But I've done minor league games where there's been a man on second in extra innings. I don't mind it at all. Bring some strategy to the game in those late innings. As far as the robo umpire, that's tough. I mean, I know the game is kind of based off of human error, but some of these pitchers, who are throwing on the corner and they don't get the call, it's tough to see. But again, as long as an umpire is consistent, then I think it's fine about where he's calling the balls and strikes. But, he's got to establish that early, and I think that's probably pretty difficult to do. But I guess they're professional umpires, so
yeah,
they can do that.
You talk about how hard it is to hit a 95-mile-per-hour fastball or a breaking ball that goes in 80 miles per hour. It's pretty hard for the umpire to see as well. So I think these guys are doing a pretty good job overall. I'm sort of a traditionalist. You guys know, I don't want something to change unless we're changing it for the better. So I'm not 100% behind some of these, but the ones more aimed at increasing pace of play, like the strike zone, or not the strike zone, rather, the 15-second pitch clock, like the runner on second base in extra innings. They're already doing that in Major League Baseball already, by the way. So I'm okay with those. So I go in between.
But different sports need to adjust. I mean, just to touch really quickly on the infield shift, I'm actually fine with them making the rule the way that they have it. I mean, the NFL has rules on how you can line up on the line of scrimmage. NBA has defensive 3 seconds, offensive 3 seconds. So I'm okay with them adjusting the positioning a little bit to encourage a little bit more playing. And then, I think it's important to note that all of this is a little bit of eyewash. This works around the margins, but the fact is the game is the way it is because every pitcher is throwing much harder than we've ever seen before. I don't know how they try to work that out of the game. I've heard some loose talk that maybe the mound gets moved back a foot or something like that. We'll have to see how things might change over time, just even with the dimension of the game. But very interesting stuff for sure.
Yeah, final thing to wrap that up. It is interesting. I watched the White Sox game, Tom Castleman's White Sox the other night. They were talking about how pitchers used to throw 94, 95. That was considered fast. Now that's like average. We see so many guys throwing 97, 98, no problem. So the pitchers are throwing really, really fast in baseball. I think baseball is a little bit trickier than the other games because baseball has such a sort of tradition, and there's a lot of old school people for baseball. The core fans of baseball love it just the way it is. But at the same time, baseball is struggling at attracting newer fans, younger fans. So it's like you're going to anger your biggest fans, but possibly attract more new fans. So it's kind of a catch-22, but more or less I do agree with pace of play stuff. So statement of the week for Drew, salutes of the week. I've got a good one. We'll start with Drew Brackett first.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's the 85th Masters at Augusta National this weekend. A tradition unlike any other. I'm pumped for it. Obviously no Tiger Woods in the tournament, so that's you're gonna miss him at that tournament. Hopefully, he can play in years to come. But really looking forward to it. Should be a great tournament even without Tiger. Angel Cabrera's not in it because he's in jail. But and it's interesting. This is a tournament where all the past champions are invited to play, right? So you get guys who really haven't played much, the Freddie Couples of the world.
John
You get those.
Daly in it?
Did he win the Masters?
I thought he did.
Let's see. I don't. Yeah. Let's see.
John Daly is a personality, so.
I'm not sure if John Daly won the Masters ever. Let's see. I'll have to take a look at this one.
Oh, he won the PGA Championship and the Open, not the Masters.
No. Yeah, I didn't think, because I know he was approved for a cart at the PGA Championship last year or a couple of years ago, because that guy can barely walk anymore. But yes, he is a personality, and I know they shut down the Hooters that he used to go to. I think it's actually still open, the one in Greensboro, or I don't know. It was in North Carolina that he had the incident at. But
he's actually
regardless,
he's only 54. I thought he was in his 60s. So.
Well, he's not that old. He's just not the healthiest guy around. I'll say that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But yeah, just really looking forward to the Masters, and just to see those past champions. You never know who can make a run.
Absolutely. It's going to be exciting. Tom Castleman certainly not looking for one of the you never know who can make a run, though, since he picked the favorites on his lock of the week. My lock of the week is involving Tom Castleman to an extent.
In your statement or salute, not lock of the week.
Statement of the week. We've seen over the last week or so in college basketball a lot of bigger type programs promoting from within. And I think that's exciting to see. I love anytime they promote from within. It shows that you have a good culture in your building and you're giving guys opportunities, such as Hubert Davis for North Carolina. I believe he's the first African-American coach ever at North Carolina, head coach. He's been a longtime assistant since 2012. He's been a part of a national championship winning team for UNC. And they're continuing the culture, losing Roy Williams, going with Hubert Davis, someone who's been a part of their winning ways. Also another guy, Drew Valentine. Yes, that is the brother of Denzel Valentine. They look exactly the same at Loyola, Tom Castleman's school. So while you can become an Oklahoma fan, also be a fan of Loyola. Mm-hmm. He's been an assistant coach for 4 years there, so he was there during the Final Four. He was there during the Elite Eight, and they believe that at 29 years old, younger than me, at 29 years old, he is believed to be the youngest head coach in NCAA basketball right now. So cool to see him get that opportunity. Also, over at Texas Tech, Mark Adams has been an assistant at Texas Tech for 5 years. He also gets the head coaching job at Texas Tech again. He was also part of that team that made the NCAA championship a couple years ago. So I just love when in general, whether it's sports or the workforce, when you promote from within, because it shows that you care about your people. It shows that you're picking the right people and you're building the right culture. So in a profession like in a school like UNC, where they can go for a splash hire, they can hire just about any coach that they want, honestly, because that's such a big name job. They gave Hubert Davis a chance. So I'm just excited about the assistants getting promoted.
As you should be. It's a great hire.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, wishing success to all of them going forward in their newfound roles. And good to see some fresh blood as opposed to the same retreads getting over and over and over again.
Sure, absolutely. Well, that does it for Salute Your Sports Week 26, Part 2. 2 shows this week. I think we'll be back to just one, so sorry for the diehard fans. But we'll have all the latest sports for you every week on Salute Your Sports. Have a great day, everyone.